Hi, lovelies. I'm so excited to be back and recording a workshop for you. I know there's so much grief right now in the collective, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of frustration and challenges, and just like really real shit happening. And so it feels like a really big honor and service. Um, to be able to sit down and record this information and trusting that this video, through your support and through the powers that be, finds its way to the people that this can support most. We're going to be getting into some really, really interesting astrology talking about today. I'm recording this on the vernal or the spring equinox and looking at tomorrow, March 21st, Aries new moon, which has just major energy. And then maybe the biggest thing of the whole astrological year, we're going to be talking about Pluto's monumental move into Aquarius on Thursday, March 23rd. We're going to be pulling some tarot for the collective. So if you're here watching this, doesn't matter at what time, these cards are going to be for you. And we're going to close it out with just some really present, embodied time to sit back and receive some energy healing work, um, if that suits you, just to really let everything settle in, move maybe from the cognitive, the intellectual, because astrology can sometimes really hit us up there, especially with all this Aries energy. Aries rules the head, a pioneer in intense thinking in a lot of ways. And so the energy healing at the end, the intention is just to allow everything to integrate and settle in the way that it needs to. These videos are based on an energetic exchange. If you watch this and you feel like you've received value or information or just some time that you've been able to carve out for yourself, it's so important to honor energetic exchanges. This can mean sharing the video. And also, there is a PayPal link in my YouTube banner. And if you received this video by way of my newsletter, there is some details as well too of how to contribute by either PayPal or by e-transfer. That is so appreciated and contributes not only to the sustainability of these types of workshops, but also support the folks that want to engage with this content that don't have it within their means at the current moment to contribute financially. So it's a community effort, and hopefully this is of high value for all who experience it. That is my intention. So if you haven't already, just separate yourself from the day that you've had thus far, the evening that you've had thus far, and create a little bit of an intentional space for yourself here. I have a tea with some oat straw, nettle, and licorice, just really soothing that nervous system with all of this big, intense Aries energy coming in. I have a candle lit, and just creating a nice intentional space for yourself. And when you're ready, we're going to jump right into it. Today, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to actually share my screen and show you the astrological chart, because I think just even visually, whether or not you're familiar with astrology, seeing what's going on may bring stuff up for you in your body or in your mind, and just to see how focused we are on this astrological new year energy. Aries, of course, is the first sign of the zodiac. It rules the first house. It really is this spark of initiation, this intensity, the energy that it takes for, the energy, the being within a seed to break through that dark soil and come up into the light. Aries is all about courage. It takes courage to leave the darkness, to leave hibernation if you're here in the Northern Hemisphere. It takes bravery to be the first one to do something. Aries is all about this pioneer energy, this initiating energy, and it needs to kind of be this force of reckoning, this badass kind of ferocity, almost recklessness at times, because it needs to start off this whole astrological show. So a lot of people talk about how the fact that the astrological new year, and a lot of different cultures celebrate their new year at this time, at the budding of spring. Nature is waking up, people are feeling more energized, projects feel like we've received the etheric information through Pisces season as we sort of drifted and rested and let ourselves daydream. In those sort of mutable realms, Pisces is mutable water. And then as we ground into Aries, cardinal fire energy, we can feel not only that urge to get things going again, but sometimes it can come with this frustration of like, oh, there's just so much pent up that we've brought with us from the entire astrological year. So we can really look at this time as a new beginning, which can sometimes be really inspiring to hear and sometimes incredibly frustrating if we don't feel how we think we should feel at this time. I remember staying awake for the first time for New Year's, like a December 31st to January 1st transition when I was like, I don't know, 10 years old, and just being so fucking disappointed that like the ground didn't shake and like the heavens didn't open and like I don't know what I was expecting to happen, light to pour in, just something miraculous. Um, and I think sometimes when we have this new year energy, we feel like we need to feel ready. And Aries energy is a kind of like your ass is just going to get kicked into gear whether or not you're ready kind of feeling. But I really do believe we can make this transition easier on ourselves by really honoring what's come before. I think a lot of us, especially with sort of the colonized Western mind, are expected to just be productive and to be sort of aware and full of intention right out of the gate and just ready to hit the ground running, know exactly what we want. And the astrology that I'm going to show you is really showing us that things are still probably feeling a little unclear, a little murky. Maybe we're more aware of the grief or the frustration that's present rather than, this beautiful, well-packaged intention. And I just want to say, yeah, I really hope one day as a collective we can start to shed the baggage and the pressure of feeling like we need to be at a certain place cognitively, energetically, physically, at these certain sort of pivot points in the astrology in the year, and that's so not the case. One thing with Aries season, which spring equinox starts off Aries season, is to really start to ask ourselves what lessons, but also what baggage have we been carrying around for the entirety of this cycle around the zodiac, from last Aries to Taurus to Gemini to Cancer season, the whole year round, that culminates in Pisces. This is sometimes a rough transition, again, because we're going from the dreamy, ethereal realm of Pisces into this really sort of like grounded, real, sometimes even aggressive Aries energy. And it feels like you're in this deep, deep sleep and someone shakes you awake. So this is not usually an easy transition energetically, just so you know, just again to take that pressure off how you might be feeling. But it is important as we walk through the threshold of the end of this astrological year into this astrological new year, we can start to be a little bit contemplative of, what feels persistent in me. What feels still incomplete? What feels like I've still been kind of entertaining the same old bullshit? What parts of me am I still feeling really frustrated by? And also, how have I integrated so much knowledge and wisdom and awareness and lessons through maybe the hardships and the really great times of the last cycle that I want to consciously take with me through this threshold? But I'm sort of getting this image, if you go to different temples, especially around the world, there's an act of purification that happens before you enter the temple or the door. You either wash your hands or you wash your feet, or you make sure you are modest in some way. You've humbled yourself, either through clothing or prayer, before you enter this sacred space. And the transition from Pisces to Aries is a little bit like that. We need to be prepared to be humbled by this transition and to really get honest with ourselves about what we have to sacrifice in order to move forward with a more uplifted or liberated feeling. What baggage do I really need to put down, whether or not I think I can or I'm ready, in order to cross this threshold? So that's just something to keep in mind as we move through this week, especially, and as we continue to contemplate what this new year energy is really going to be about for us. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you the chart of Tuesday, March 21st new moon in Aries, which is going to be the first new moon of this new astrological year. And I'm just going to show you how dominant this energy is. All right, so I hope you can see that. Um, the first thing that might be obvious to you here is how heavy the energy is over here. So you can ignore the numbers of the houses and the clock faces. This is set for Vancouver, where I live, but otherwise we're just paying attention to all of these symbols in here and the signs that they're in and these mathematical equations between them. And so essentially, I think the first thing that's apparent here is just how much energy is clustered in this quadrant. We have a huge amount of energy in Aries. Anytime we have a new moon, we have the sun and moon, these little glyphs here, conjunct, which just means snuggling up in the sky. Sun and moon are always conjunct at the time of a new moon. That's what makes it a new moon. And these two are falling in Aries. I know it looks like this is over here, but really it's just because they're on top of each other and they can't show up in the same space. Ooh, my little thing got big there. That was cool. So we have the sun and moon. We also have Mercury, planet of thinking, communication in Aries. We have Jupiter in Aries, which Jupiter is the magnifier. He really just expands absolutely everything, which makes this energy even more big. And then we have this glyph here, which represents Chiron. Chiron is known to be the wounded healer. It's the wounds in us that maybe we feel like we've even been birthed into this world with, just these persistent open wounds that no matter how much contemplation, how much self-forgiveness, how much relational work or therapy or psychedelics or whatever the fuck we've tried to do to sort of like penetrate this feeling about ourselves, this limitation or this wound or this inadequacy that we feel like we have. Chiron is the one, it's the healer that couldn't heal himself, is the myth. And so Chiron has been in Aries for a long time. That's bringing up a lot of these, and this is for everyone, by the way, because this is where this is in the collective. This would have relationship to your own birth chart if you know that. But Chiron really highlights, especially in Aries, wounding around identity, around the feeling of self, around the feeling of being able to show up as a capable leader, about the ability to feel courageous, to do something first. And so if you're feeling internal frustration or grief or a stuckness, know that Jupiter is magnifying this energy. Maybe our thoughts are going in these directions as well. Being in Aries, we might feel sort of like impulsive or fed up, or we're just really trying to like get this monkey off our back and just trying to like almost like grapple for things to be different. And the struggle of that is likely not bringing any change. But know that this is all divine, and that this pressure cooker of all this Aries energy has the intention to eventually, transmute, to transform us into something different. So Aries energy at its sort of like low vibration tends to be incredibly spontaneous, sometimes impulsive. It sort of doesn't look before it leaps. It maybe speaks before it realizes the consequences of what's being said. It can sometimes be a very dominant and aggressive energy. And so this is not about Aries people, by the way. We all have Aries in our chart, even if we don't have any planets in Aries. But this is just something to pay attention to, both in your body. Maybe, physical activity might feel good to start to move some of this energy, but just keeping it in touch with the heart, because this is vital information, what's moving through us at this time. In the higher sort of octave of Aries energy, again, this is leadership. This is initiation. This is being willing to take a risk, which Aries is really good at, and do something first. Take a chance, be the outlier. Do the courageous thing, which is sometimes turning and looking directly at the shadow or at the grief or at the fear. Fear is huge, huge, huge in the collective right now. I mean, I could list literally everything that is a source of fear for some people, but fear is it is the most primal feeling. It belongs to the first chakra, our root, our sense of security and safety, in Aries being the first house in the zodiac, relating to the first chakra. We might have feelings of insecurity, safety, financial security questions coming up right now, especially with the economy the way it is. And so just know that the astrology is almost compressing us into this quadrant with this Aries energy, and it would make sense that shit is coming up for you if it is right now. The key to this is to use the Aries exalted energy of courage to try in whatever way makes sense for you to be with it and to honor these feelings. I've included this Kuiper Belt object. It's sort of a deep space celestial body that's not a planet, called Manwe. Manwe is said to represent in myth the triumph of light over darkness. So know that shadow is just unconscious energy. It can feel incredibly challenging, of course, at times. I mean, that's the whole point of shadow, is to challenge the lightness in us, to challenge what's conscious and what's known, and bring things from the unconscious up to the conscious mind and awareness. What's important to remember is that shadow exists within us. It's not something that needs to be sort of restrained. It needs to actually be loved and nurtured and turned to and listened to and understood. This is the work. So this is happening at the new moon in Aries on March 21st. Something that we want to know is this guy. This represents Neptune, which is in Pisces. So it's not in Aries, but it's going to be conjunct. So also snuggling up in the sign, what's called an out of sign, because it's not in the same side, conjunction with the new moon. Neptune is the planet ruler of Pisces that brings that wishy-washy, almost like cloudiness, that veiled energy to things. So if you are feeling this frustration and it's compounded by the fact that you don't know what you're frustrated about, or you can't see a clear path forward, or you're not really understanding what you're getting out of this, or why you're triggered, or why you're exhausted, or da 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 da, know that Neptune might have something to do with this. It's almost like, I heard someone use this example the other day, but the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. So it's like the voice is so loud of these shadow pieces of this Aries energy that's saying change and do something different and leave this shit behind. And the veil of not really knowing the source of this, or where it's coming from, or it comes in an unclear way, kind of gives this Wizard of Oz behind the curtain with the megaphone image. So this is all happening at the same time. This is squaring Mars over here. So see these red lines, squaring Mars in Gemini. A square is when energy starts to feel kind of challenged. There's a tension again between these areas of the chart, and that just leads to things feeling again this like frustrated, kind of rigid, like something needs to give energy. And this might come in terms of the mental aspect, in terms of thinking, because Mars is in Gemini, and Gemini, ruler of Mercury, or connected with Mercury and with Virgo. Where's Virgo? Over here. Tends to do a lot with thinking, with thought. This is also a ruler of social media and media. So if you're, I mean, social media at these sorts of times when things are so chaotic or tumultuous in the collective, social media doesn't usually bring more stability. But just know that some of this tension is likely being kicked up by this really supercharged Mars warring energy almost of the mind. So you might be especially challenged if you encounter mental health challenges, or just you're feeling like your mind is working against you, or shadow pieces are coming up, especially through internal dialogue or through conversation. Just know, I always find astrology super helpful, not in mitigating or helping us avoid the reality of the cosmic circumstance, but empowering us by letting us know what we can pay attention to. And so this energy on the collective scale does sometimes prime things for conflict, for war. And so also just being conscious and aware of, if you are consuming news and media, just to be aware of the impact on your psyche. This is already all happening for us personally, and this is going to play out in the collective. And one thing that we talked about, I did run an Equinox circle for the community over Zoom with people live. And one thing that we were talking about is, how do we maintain empowerment. How do we maintain a feeling of hope when we look at a chart like this that feels so tumultuous? And we talk about the ability to affect our own individual sphere of influence, our own personal mind, family, energy field, whatever. And knowing that this home right here is primarily our responsibility first. Before we give it to the collective, we must make sure that we feel stable, because the collective is made up of a whole bunch of our own individual energy fields. And so those of us who do have the honor and privilege to consume work like this or take time to do self-reflection have an extra responsibility to use our tools and resources to stay as aligned and as aware and as conscious as possible, because we understand that our coherence will ultimately be the thing that supports the collective field. And I think the more and more people awaken to this sort of energetic alignment is the antidote on some level to the unconscious shadow warring energy of like actual conflict in the world. The last thing I'm going to talk about with this chart before we get into tarot is this movement of Pisces or Pluto, sorry, into Aquarius. So as you can see, he's teetering at the very, very edge, the last degree, the 29th degree of Capricorn. Pluto has been moving through Capricorn since 2008. Pluto in myth is this sort of concept of Persephone. It's the journeyer through the underworld. It goes so deep into the psyche, and it just overturns and overhauls and almost destroys what's in its path. I like to think too of the goddess Kali, the creator, the destroyer, the bringer of life through destruction. And so Pluto, the destroyer, the one responsible for transformation, has been moving through Capricorn. Capricorn typically rules top-down authority, institutions, government, medical system, things like anything where the top few have power and everyone else doesn't, typically rules Capricorn. And we can see since 2008 how Pluto has been shifting and changing those systems, dismantling them over time. A lot of us remember in 2008, as soon as Pluto went into Capricorn, financial crisis in 2008. So in the 29th degree where Pluto's been for the last couple weeks, we're seeing almost the magnified energy of its history as in its movement through Capricorn. And so things feel like they get louder before they shift. And so that's what's been happening the last few weeks as Pluto kind of grinds through that last degree in Capricorn. And it will make its way back, which I'll talk about in a second. But this tip of Pluto into Aquarius energy is huge, because Pluto in a sign typically represents a whole generation. Pluto has a very long transit through each sign, and Pluto is going to be spending time off and on in Aquarius until 2044. So for some people, that is, a good chunk of their life. And Pluto, being again the destroyer, moving into Aquarius speaks to a lot of different themes, and we're going to be able to get a sense of what these themes are more clearly as we live it, because astrology is both mathematical prediction and archetypal energy exploration, but it's also how we as a collective and we as individuals show up with it in our own consciousness. So there's no determined way exactly how these things are going to manifest, because it depends the energy and that we bring into the relationship with it. Saying that, we can start to look at some themes about what Aquarius represents and what we might come to experience over the next 20 years. Pluto is power. Aquarius rules things like science, like technology, like data, aviation, space, the galactic. So power coming into that sector could mean one thing. We're already seeing the domination of power in the realms of technology. I think that's something we should stay hyper aware of and cautious and conscious of, how much power we give to the ever growing and the speediness of its growth of technology. But Aquarius also rules humanitarianism. It's the collective. It's the awakened one. It's the revolutionary. It's the eccentric. It's the one that is so fearlessly themselves, and understanding that that is how we are of most service to the collective. So if I could think of anything, as you see, even the glyph, sometimes it's drawn more like spiky lines, but Aquarius really is this like bolt of lightning. It's ruled by Uranus, which moves very quickly, abruptly, and sometimes unpredictably. It's the ruler of sort of surprises. It sometimes rules power outages. It can contribute to things like earthquakes or political upheaval because it has just sort of this unpredictable energy. But power moving through this sector of technology, aviation, and space, I can see this as being a disclosure, Pluto tilling the depths of some of our galactic influences, probably seeing a lot more information about the disclosure of the fact that we know a lot more about the universe and other beings that live here than we've been made to believe. Likely, I think we're going to have a lot more psychic connection come online for folks. I think we're also going to realize that we're only useful in the collective when we show up as ourselves and we stop trying to emulate others out of masking and self-protection. And we realize that actually we can only unify against strong powers by coming into grassroots humanitarian efforts and unifying in our uniqueness, but coming to a collective agreement of our hope for humanity and getting mobilized around that. So this is really about social justice, social responsibility, and also I really think starting to use our psychic abilities and our connections with other beings to support this shift of power from institutions, Pluto and Capricorn, to the hands of the people, power returning to the hands of the people. Whew. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just taking a note of how you're feeling, because that can be a lot. Aries is the ruler of the head, as I think I mentioned. So just noticing this collection of energy maybe up around your head. And starting to breathe all of that in the direction of your feet. Just letting it almost like sand or glitter in a snow globe just start to settle deeper into your body. We'll take 3 breaths here. And an audible sigh. The last thing I'll say about this astrology is we're just going to get a taste of this Pluto in Aquarius energy this year. So from March 23rd, this coming Thursday, to June 11th, Pluto is going to move into Aquarius, just over that little line. Then he's going to retrograde back into Capricorn. And then from January 20th, 2024 through to September 1st of 2024, again into Aquarius, little foray back into Capricorn. And then as of November 19th, 2024, all the way through till March 2043, it's going to be pretty solidly in Aquarius. And that's when we're really going to get to feel into the meaning of this energy, and know that because Pluto rules generational energy, this is not always going to be apparent right away. This is going to be like a low, slow societal change. It might feel super intense right now with all of that Aries energy that makes things feel quite urgent, but just know and trust that we have the capabilities, we have the communities, and we are so fucking ready. If you're here on the planet at this time, we are so fucking ready. Like, that's where the warrior energy of Aries, I think, really serves us. Is, at least I feel like we are so equipped, especially when we tap into that celestial nature, to handle all that is coming at us. And when it doesn't feel like it, hopefully someone else in our community feels galvanized and powerful still, while we can't hold that, and then we take turns falling apart. That's the ideal. So I pulled a card for the collective today in the tarot, and I think it integrates really interestingly with what we've just talked about. So I'm going to show it to you. So this is the Hanged Man card, reversed. This card is super interesting. So this is a major arcana card. This is the upright position, but it's interesting because it's a reversal naturally. The Hanged Man is actually ruled by Neptune, which is the ruler of Pisces, the energy we're coming through. And so it does have this sort of change of perception, this meditative quality. Um, the sort of myth that goes behind this card is in Norse tradition. There was an energy who hung themselves upside down from the tree to achieve enlightenment. Essentially, it's a metaphor for needing to change our perspective to come into enlightenment, to come into patience, into that receptivity of new information coming through, and then it landing. The interesting thing about this card being reversed is it actually shows this person back on their feet. I always feel like there's a bit of good fortune with this card. This is my association with this card. I think it would be interesting for you to look at this and notice what comes up for you. Does it feel hopeful? Does it feel confused? How does it feel for you? But the way this person crosses their legs to me really looks like the glyph that we draw for Jupiter. Jupiter is ruled by Sagittarius. It's about expansion, it's about freedom, it's about the higher mind. So that's always what comes up for me. But this card in the reverse shows this person with this corona around their head. There is mental or consciousness-based expansion in terms of their thinking. But I also think this shows us that to be aware of what we think we're supposed to be feeling and experiencing right now. The way I read this card is that I think this is cautioning us against becoming rigid in how we think we should feel right now. When we come into an incredibly new cycle, like the one we're in with especially Pluto's movement into Aquarius, I think it's so natural and human for us to project what we think newness is based on experiences we've had into the future. And to me, this says we have no fucking idea what's coming. If it's truly new, we have no experience with it. We have no map. We have no context. We have tools, of course, because it's how we've navigated everything that's come before. But this idea of keeping a fresh and open and curious, expanded mind, because if it's truly novel, if it's truly new, we might not know how to place it right away. Again, Neptune rules blurriness, fogginess, confusion. And so I think coming into the mind of, Aquarius, the scientist, the anthropologist, observing and noticing things with as much neutrality as possible is going to be the thing that really serves us. And to be mindful of our perception, if we're projecting perception that we've carried through this whole last cycle of the zodiac into this future that is still relatively unknown. And I think I'm going to pull another card just because I pulled that one before we started recording and just to see, based on the energy of the people watching this video, what's here. And so coming into your body, coming into your heart, see if a question arises. I'm getting this sense of what can we lean on for support? If this is new, we don't have the perception to be able to know what's coming. Aquarius energy is so linked to solar flares and solar activity, coronal mass ejections, just wild energy that our DNA, our bodies, our light bodies are trying to integrate. There's so much that we don't understand yet, especially as us in the Gen Pop, that might not stay aware of these things. So we're gonna ask the tarot, what can we as a collective here watching this video lean on for support? So we have the Ace of Cups. This is really interesting. Cups are always emotional energy. I'm just listening. Sorry if you're like, what's she doing? Just listening. So Aces are always new beginnings. They're seeds that have been planted. Cups always represent, or I find represent the emotional realm. But I think when I see this card, what can we lean on for support? There's both this, there's sort of this sense of deep spiritual trust that I feel, especially like seeing this sort of like fountaining action that's happened. If you've ever sort of felt or visualized sort of the energy moving through your central channel, the toroidal field, it has this sort of like fountaining effect in the body. Excuse me. And so I feel like this is allowing the energy of spirit into our field, the celestial support, but also really honoring the feelings that come and trusting that the movement of this energy is creating space for this newness. So when higher vibrational energy comes to the planet, either through solar activity, celestial activity, non-physical experience, or physical experience, typically we have to the high vibration of it triggers the density within our bodies, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, etc., and it facilitates movement can often sometimes feel destabilizing without the context of the fact that we are in a healing process. We can actually feel more destabilized when we are getting really emotional, or we're crying, or things are moving, or things are changing, or the confusion is prominent. And this can feel really destabilizing when it's not in this bigger context of the fact that it's high vibrational energy shifting our energy bodies down to the cellular DNA level. And that is facilitating the movement and the clearing so that we can take in this new energy. So when we ask this card, what can we rely on for support? I'd say trust your energetic movement, your feelings that come up, and seeing them in this context of a new beginning, of it creating space for you on a cellular level, this purification process that's happening, and know that it's being facilitated in a really divine way. This is a gift, this is an offering, and to do our best to be supported to stay in flow with it rather than resistance, because there's always going to be a transition time between the no longer, the old, dense, and the not yet, what's coming. And it's in that time where we are suspended between the known and the unknown that we're really going to start to come into doubt. And the kind of feeling that comes up is we want to run back to the old thing. The devil we know is better than the devil we don't, right? So we want to run back to safety. And this is saying, stay with and trust this process. Okay, so with that, we're going to do a little bit of energy healing work to close this out, to support you in holding whatever's been emerging for you. This is always consent based. If you're not feeling into this, you're welcome to click off now. Otherwise, just need you to say out loud as you're watching this, I consent to receive this energy healing for my highest and best good. Knowing that energy doesn't require us to be in the same physical space or proximity for it to be effective, because it is not bound by time or space. It is very much consciousness and intention based. And so I'm going to put on some soft, gentle music. Hopefully it's the right volume for you. And we're just going to spend a few moments allowing these shifts to take place in us based on what we've explored together here. And letting you have sort of this experience of integrating this, seeing what emerges. Energy healing, sometimes the effects are obvious right now, and sometimes it's in a few days' time. And so just know you're doing something yummy for yourself that can only have beautiful, loving, and positive effects on you. And know that after this time of us together ends, I no longer have a desire or the permission to access your energy field. And so this will not affect you beyond this time that we share together. It's really important to communicate. Alrighty. So hopefully you can hear that just softly. So sitting down comfortably, lying down if you're not already. And just starting to drop even deeper into your heart. Doing this by starting to breathe in and out through the front and back of your heart. And just seeing what it's like to give yourself permission to really lay down what feels heavy in this moment. You can almost imagine taking off a heavy backpack and dropping it on the ground. Just starting to feel this permission come over you to just rest and not have to carry all of this. Maybe a lot of it hasn't even been conscious. Maybe a lot of it isn't even yours. There's so much going on in the collective that sensitive people, empathic people tend to take on suffering of other people just by their good-hearted nature. We sometimes don't even realize how heavy that becomes. Knowing that we can never actually do anyone else's spiritual work for them. And so as you are laying this heaviness down, know that you're not creating any more heaviness for anyone else. You're not creating any more work. You're just freeing yourself up to be more capable and available for true service. When you are in self-honoring, when you are in your own liberation, your very frequency has a profound effect on those you encounter. So breathing into that, breathing into the fact that this new moon in Aries is truly about the self, the I am. And so who are you underneath all of this baggage? Who are you underneath all of these wounds and challenges that you've been encountering, maybe for a very, very long time? There is a core of you that is fundamentally uncorrupted, that has been and always been innocent in its divine perfection. The seed in you lives in your heart, the seed of the soul. Taking a breath into that space just above the physical heart. I forgive you. I hear you. I love you. I know you. Feeling these words resonate deep, deep within you. Feel this true part of yourself come alive again. buried in the challenges and the heaviness of all of this, there's this lightness in you that has always remained unaffected, uncorrupted. Feeling your breath grow deeper as you tap into this part of yourself. Feeling the light start to pour in through the top of your head to meet this part of you. We are all connected to something so much bigger than our own individual minds. This part of you, this ember, this spark, this flame within you is the anchor point for this great celestial connection. And if this doesn't feel true for you, ask yourself, would you like this to be true for you? And notice how your body responds. Would you like to believe this? This process of coming through both the debris of our own third dimensional personal lives, but also through the end of Pisces into the beginning of Aries, is a lot like a birthing process. It's dark, it's painful, it's messy, and you're also never the same afterwards. We know that this birthing process is just the beginning. It's not going to feel like this forever, but effort is required in this sense of being willing to be with what is right now. Feel into everyone else showing up through their heart in the willingness to see this process through, despite the pain and the mess and the confusion. Tap into that network, that web, so many other beings wanting this as well, desiring to break through, to do something fundamentally different for ourselves, for our children, for the planet. Feeling that light fill up your field now. Feeling it come into your cells and your hands, your feet, your mouth, your eyes, your spine, your belly, your heart. And maybe even whispering to yourself, I am willing. I am ready. I am here. Breathing up into the third eye. And then out Out the top of the head. Up through the base of the tailbone, the root. Out through the top of the head. And then one big breath into the solar plexus, the place where your ribs meet. Your power center, feeling that energy stored, ready, mobilized. We are so capable of doing this, especially when we do it together. So, laying here for as long as you like, or when you're ready, placing a hand on your heart. Just honoring and thanking yourself for showing up and taking this time for yourself in service of you and also all that you come into contact with. When you are ready, you can come to open your eyes. Take the time you need to journal anything, to write anything down. If you do feel like you have an intention for this new cycle beginning for yourself, how you want to show up in this process, write it down, speak it out loud, say it to a friend, yell it from the rooftops, send it to a star, bury it in the ground. Declare it, own it. It's yours to take, it's yours to hold firm. So thank you so much for spending this time with me. Thank you for the wonderful energy exchange that you provide me as well, just by receiving this, taking it into your heart, sharing financially if that's within your means, and also sharing with your friends or anyone who you think would benefit from this video. Thank you so much again, sending you such incredible blessings of boldness and beauty and bigness and just embodied presence for this time that we're moving through together. Just thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.